I kind of want to know from the boxing side what boxing thinks here, and we should also, right off the bat, address we have a guy who texted in several times with a 504 phone number and is arguing with us just how relevant James Toney is in boxing. He's ranked. He's 2 fights away from a mandatory. We'll bring on Steve Kim, who knows boxing as well as anybody, from MaxBoxing.com. Steve, how you doing?
I'm not so sure that this even causes a ripple. I mean, I actually think that is a legitimate point over how legitimate right now is James Toney as a heavyweight. I mean, let's face it. If he was on the verge of an HBO or Showtime fight or really in serious negotiations to face one of the Klitschkos, do you really think he'd be doing this? This is going to be a bit of a reality check for James. And he's used to, for much of his career, making 6 and 7 figures. And the UFC business model is much different than boxing. And I think that's going to be the most interesting thing to me, is how will he be able to do that? And I think he's doing it, taking the significant cut in pay, I'm assuming, because he may have no other options in boxing. From a boxing perspective, I don't think it's that much of a loss. I'm not so sure how relevant he was. And I think it would be a bigger story for both the MMA and boxing if, let's say, this was a fighter that was in his physical prime.
Yep.
I think James Toney, for the most part, is thought of as a guy certainly in the twilight of his career.
Be a big story, too, if it was someone who you actually believe was going to take it seriously and really prep himself for the other areas of mixed martial arts. I don't think James is going to do any of that aside from maybe lose some weight.
Yeah, that's another issue. And there's no doubt, from a striking perspective, James Toney is probably better, significantly better than anyone that is a practitioner of the MMA. But that's only about, 1/4 of the game? There are so many other facets in participating in the UFC. You got to be a wrestler. You got to know some jiu-jitsu, maybe some martial arts. And you have to be a guy that's amphibious in there. You have to be able to land or air. You got to be able to strike, attack, and counter. And I've always thought it was a bad idea for boxers to get in there. Boxers, for what they do, that one singular skill, they're probably better than any MMA combatant. But from an all-around skill set perspective, I think that they lag just as far behind. So it'll be interesting. I mean, James Toney's got good natural strength. He's certainly a tough guy. But we're talking about a huge gap, guys, in terms of the, number one, the talent level that it takes to be successful in that realm, and number 2, the learning curve. And I don't know, and again, you touched on it, Steve, how serious is he going to be about this?
Well, even if he is serious about it, he's old. See, let's just look at him from the boxing perspective. He brings nothing to the table except food.
And Dave, that's precisely why he's going to the MMA. Because I think he realizes that the jig is up in the sport of boxing. And I just wonder if this is Dana White's own way of, number one, poking at boxing a little bit, saying that, hey, your guys can't compete in my realm. And let's face it, James Toney's the type of guy, with his personality and the stuff that he's going to say, he's going to bring some interest, no matter what we think of him, no matter what stage of this career he might be at. He is a character. He is a personality. He'll stir it up. And from Dana White's perspective, it's almost a no-lose proposition. It really is, because he's getting a fairly big name from the past generation of boxing. He's going to get a guy that will at least grab your attention, at least for one fight. And from James Toney's perspective, as I said before, he may have no other option, because, Dave, as you pointed out, he is really at the tail end, if not the end, of what really was a very good yet underachieving career.